And it is my honor to introduce the panelists to you. If you guys would like to join us here at the front, that would be great. We have with us today Heather Cleary. She's the Chief Executive Officer for Peninsula Family Service. Give a wave. Dr. Kismet Baldwin-Santana, who was just recently appointed as San Mateo County's Health Officer. Tracy Weatherby, the Vice President of Strategy and Advocacy for Second Harvest of Silicon Valley. And you've all been introduced to Mike already. So as you heard from Simona's presentation and what Mike said, the services that children and families need to lead sustainable lives are broad. And we brought together these panelists because they represent such different sectors of society, whether it's healthcare, childcare, education, housing. Really, they will be able to provide so much insight. And I thank you for being here today. Because of this experience, we'd like to ask you each to just briefly describe how your agency supports children, youth, and family in the county. Introduce yourselves. Do you have a microphone? Will be sharing. Would you like to start, Tracy?
Sure. So I'm Tracy from Second Harvest of Silicon Valley, and I see in this audience many people that we work with really closely, both from our governments and from our partners, because we work with people like Heather's agency. So we are the food bank for Santa Clara County and San Mateo County, and we have over 400 partners who help us distribute food to the community at over 1,000 locations. And so for most people who are getting food to people, groceries in particular, although some of the meals programs, they're getting the majority of that food from us for free. So we're kind of like the wholesaler for food assistance in the two counties. And what we've seen happen during the pandemic, as Mike and Heather well know, is need doubled. You know, we are serving twice as many people as we were before the pandemic. It briefly went down last year, and then inflation hit. CalFresh benefits declined, and now we are serving just as many people as we were during the pandemic because families are really struggling. And one of the things that we always note is that there is no such thing as a food insecurity measure that is disconnected from all of these other factors. Food is one of the first places that people can actually start to economize so that they can maintain their housing, so they can pay the childcare, so they can continue to work. So, you know, the interesting thing about food is people often want to kind of silo it off and say, tell us the food insecurity rate. But it is tied entirely to the cost of living here and whether people are able to afford to live here, because food is going to be one of the first places they can start to manage their budgets without ending up on the streets. And, you know, we are really finding that it's very challenging right now. The county has been incredibly generous during the pandemic as we've had federal funds and ARPA funds. But we're not seeing the need go down. And given the inequality in these counties, we don't expect it to anytime soon. And so we're really looking to the community and the government to help us figure out how to create a sustainable base of providing this assistance to people. What we find is that people don't know that pre-pandemic, 95% of our funding was private, although people treat us as a kind of quasi-governmental agency. It went as high as 10% during the pandemic, but we think there needs to be a more systemic solution to making sure this all fits together. So I think that's an introduction. I'll pass it on to Heather.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm Heather Cleary with Peninsula Family Service, and what we do is provide tools and support to children, families, older adults, individuals. We have a suite of older adult programs designed to reduce isolation and loneliness. We support them with employment opportunities. We've got financial education for all of our individuals in this county. And we are best known for our 8 early learning sites in San Mateo County. They are full day, full year, designed for working parents. And we are in the process of expanding and adding 2 new early learning sites just for infants and toddlers, because we know the need is so great. And we found some opportunities working with our government partners to provide facilities and do so. So right now there is an opportunity at the state to do more of that. If any cities are interested, talk to me after, because it's all about, I think, bringing dollars into our county to serve our people. And those dollars can come from everywhere, including the county. Thanks, Mike.
Hi, I'm Kismet Belvin Santana, and this has been a really great opportunity. I just want to take a second because I'm writing down furiously all of these other, organizations and what is available in the county. This is a nice way to get acquainted with that. But I mean, for health, I'm going to talk about health as a whole, the whole department, and it's surprising. Some people may be surprised that most of our programs and our divisions and certainly the medical center touch children, families in different ways, anywhere from communicable disease intervention. We are interested in what's going on with children and their families, all the way to, behavioral health, of course. But we do have a division, Family Health Services, that is their, pretty much their major focus is maternal, child, and adolescent health, and ensuring that families in this county are getting what they need to thrive. And some of the programs, just to highlight, are our nurse home visiting, which is an evidence-based program where it's a preventative intervention that is designed for families that are overburdened and are at higher risk for things like adverse childhood experiences. We know this was mentioned earlier that long-term, those can lead to things like intimate partner, violence and mental health related issues, child maltreatment, substance use disorder. So really, focusing on those families and promoting, parenting and child development, that's been wildly successful. And during COVID, that program, was paused a little bit, as most things were, but thankfully since then, it's skyrocketed. We've had an increase in referrals. We've actually got a wait list for one of those programs where families in the county are really interested in participating in that. Of course, I think most people know about WIC, Women, Infant, and Children's Program, providing nutrition education, breastfeeding support, food sometimes, and also connecting these families to community resources. And that has also skyrocketed and increased, since the pandemic, with referrals. And I think we're actually servicing over 90% of the eligible families at this point in time in San Mateo County. We're doing better than many health jurisdictions in the state. So that's super positive. Our medical therapy unit, they're actually out there in the community, often based in schools around the county, and they're providing occupational therapy and physical therapy to children who have, things like cerebral palsy or other things that require, that extra help. And so they don't have to go, to a physician or to an outpatient clinic to receive those services. They can get them right there in the community. And again, everything took a little bit of a hit and was paused during the pandemic, but thankfully everything really has rebounded since then and exceeded expectations in a lot of areas. So we're excited about that, always excited about expanding, as we can, any of our resources and services.
Thank you. Mike, would you have anything to add to your presentation?
Just that it's a joy to work with these 3 women. I got to tell you that Tracy's just been incredible to work with. Really never says no, and we asked so much of her during the pandemic and even after the pandemic. And certainly Heather, we've got such a long relationship with Heather in all that she does for the kids. And then for Kismet, it was like, searching for this impossible position right after the pandemic. There were really very few health officers, and it was like winning the lotto, finding Kismet and bringing her to San Mateo County. But we play, really the county's role is really the overseer of services through the nonprofits that really play such a critical role in everything that we do. And then through the Human Services Agency with our families and children section, really making sure that our kids grow up healthy through health. Also, we spend $1 billion on health in this county a year, and we're really focused on kids and making sure that they have that healthy start and the ability to grow. But there's really a never-ending need there. And like I said, if we're going to make an investment, to me, the best investment we can make is in our kids. And I always say this, that the childhood is precious and fleeting. Once it's gone for good. You don't ever get to relive your childhood. So I think we've got to try to make it as safe and productive and healthy as possible while we have them for that limited amount of time, because it really shapes the person that enters society later on in life.
Thank you. Now, the data shows that families' needs really changed with the COVID pandemic. Each of you guys also mentioned COVID in your introductions. I'd love to have you delve a little bit deeper and talk about how your agency's activities and supports have changed as a result of COVID, maybe what things you're going to keep and what you might do differently in the future. Maybe Heather could start.
Yeah.
Thanks. Great question. So we shut down when everybody else did, and we were fortunate we were able to reopen in June of 2020. Our classrooms were half the size. Our food was individually served. There was no more family style meals. Half the kids were in distance learning, which meant their parents couldn't work. And the staff were really stressed. Since then, we've slowly reopened. We have full classroom sizes. We have full hours. That took a couple of years. And luckily, the state has increased their investment in early learning, which meant we could hire more staff. So we were able to hire floater teachers. Now, if you don't know about one of the biggest problems in this county is there are very few early educators. It's not a field people go into because the pay is fairly low and there are significant barriers to entry in taking courses. So we took a look and what are our options? And we brought a nationwide program, the Child Development Associate credential, to San Mateo County. And we offered paid cohorts to learn this material. It was 8 weeks of cohorts. It was about 12 to 20 weeks of in-classroom work. And then people can get certified as an associate teacher. They can get paid $25 an hour, full benefits. And now we are fully staffed in early learning. We might be the only one to do that. So at a time when classrooms were closing, and they still are, it's still a huge problem, we found a way. The county has since added some resources for building more teachers and early educators. Our community colleges now have an apprenticeship program they're working through. But it still is a big problem because we saw there's 26,000 spaces to add. So that's 20,000 new teachers to build. One of our big challenges, but one that with a lot of help from our friends, we are able to tackle. Who wants to go next?
Okay. It's kind of hard to put a positive spin on the pandemic, but I think for our services that provide, our programs that provide services to families, it actually forced us to, and the state, frankly, to think a little more outside of the box and kind of reevaluate how those services are delivered after kind of everyone's a disaster service worker, and after, you know, kind of pausing some of these programs, everyone realized that we can't go all the way back to normal yet. You know, this was still during the pandemic. So how can we still provide those services that are needed in the, you know, in the community? And that's where, you know, we branched a little more out into telephone and virtual, and that route where most of, you know, the services and resources were, it was in person. And so how do we adapt to that? And I think we did a really good job. I think everyone did, you know, trying to be flexible and how you work and reach people when you can't be in person. And that actually ended up working out well for us, I think. Some families really took to it. They loved it. They still want to do virtual visits. And so we are allowed to continue that because that's a flexibility that the state allows now in those programs. But as soon as we could, we did move back to in-person, especially for the families who really, really wanted it, or, you know, the staff felt it was best for that family. And so we've done that too. So we've got a little bit of a hybrid, and that's, I think, expanded our ability to take on more clients and really serve the community. So that's kind of a positive that came out of the pandemic, if you can think of any. And I also think that with that spotlight that was shown on, you know, inequities and disparities, it really did move a lot of local governments. And I think that this was already happening in San Mateo, but a lot of local governments, state, and even at the federal level to, you know, recognize that we really need to, you know, put resources into decreasing those disparities. And a lot of that is in the programs and services that are, you know, delivered through health. And so that's been a nice outcome of the pandemic as well. It probably shouldn't have taken a pandemic to realize that, but we'll take it and try to keep expanding that way. It was hard on the staff because they take their work personally. There's a lot of dedication. They are, you know, they want to give the best and help out their families that they're working with the best way they can. And it was difficult pulling away. It was difficult, you know, shifting. Some of them took that, you know, to heart quite a bit. But everyone, I think, has gotten on board with, you know, finding new ways and still being able to provide the services and the care that we do. So I think we're starting to rebound, and I think there were some positives in that.
So everything changed for us during the pandemic. You know, if you looked at pre-pandemic, we had 3 warehouses. We had volunteers at a couple of them. It was primarily corporate groups and elderly folks who came in on a regular basis. We had moved to farmers market distribution of our food. Over 50% of what we provide is fresh produce. And so we, which we capture from farmers, donated product that we're keeping out of landfills. And so we had moved to a place where people could pick the food that they needed, you know, culturally appropriate. We never shut down, but we had to change everything we did for everyone's health and safety. We, all of our volunteers left. So we ended up for about a year with 150 National Guard in our warehouses, helping us sort and pack food. That transitioned over time to the San Jose Conservation Corps. And we started a lot of large drive-throughs. We started boxing all the food. So, you know, it was just this mad dash to change absolutely everything. And now we are trying to move back to more client choice, although we still have a lot of large distributions. It's very hard to implement client choice when you're serving 1,000 people at a single location. So we still have a mix. All of the San Jose Conservation Corps, National Guard are long gone, but we've been able to double the number of volunteers in our warehouses. So we're really grateful to the community. And we are now operating across 4 warehouses, which is massively inefficient. So we're in the process of trying to have a capital campaign to build an integrated facility in San Jose that serves both counties. We have a small location in San Carlos that, you know, someday we hope to upgrade, but first we need that big centralized facility to make that efficient. So we are trying to move back and adjust all at the same time. I would say one of the real silver linings for the pandemic for us is more on the advocacy side. And that is pre-pandemic, we were big proponents of universal school meals. This whole notion that you have to qualify to get a free meal at school. You don't have to qualify to get a textbook. And all of these things are based off federal poverty limits, which have nearly no relevance here, right? The federal poverty limit is ridiculous here. And so there are all these kids we knew needed the food and couldn't get it. And so we'd been advocating for that. We had a bill with Assemblymember Berman in 2018, got defeated. But one of the things that happened during the pandemic is the federal government started feeding all the kids all the time. And people started to be able to grok that notion, like, why aren't we feeding all the kids? This is crazy. And so, you know, we were able to contribute data from these two counties where we'd been doing data matching and a lot of work to the state effort. And California became the first state in the country to make universal school meals permanent. So every child in California can now get breakfast and lunch at school. And I think that's so important for food security, but it's also important for community building. We want to break down that, not like those are the free and reduced kids and those are the not reduced kids. We want to have communities as we have this. And I think there are more potential advocacy wins in the future at both the federal and state level. We'd love to see CalFresh benefits increase. There's now an effort to change the federal poverty limit. I'll just speak really loudly because this apparently has died. So, you know, I think that there's a lot. California's been a great state, for instance, Food for All, which is an effort to provide a CalFresh-like benefit to immigrants and undocumented immigrants who don't qualify for CalFresh. So there's a lot we can do. And, you know, we're really big fans of the systemic solutions that are going to help everybody and lift all the boats in our community.
I would say for the county, there was a real epiphany, a real eye-opening experience during the pandemic that really caused us a lot of angst early on. And that was really the digital divide that we witnessed. It was unbelievable to really understand how many kids didn't have access to the internet, how many kids didn't have a computer to work on, and how isolating that became when everything went remote, when it was all about remote learning. And there was a real urgency because of feeling that these kids were falling behind and would be damaged forever because of that learning void there. So there was a real urgency to pull together, and we did with the school districts and the cities, and we created a network. And certainly the libraries played a huge part in that also, in trying to get out hotspots and notebooks and building networks really overnight to ensure that everyone had equal access to the internet. And, you know, as a matter of dumping, it's all about money, right, at that point in time. And we quickly put in $6.5 million to try to build that network out. And we were pretty successful at doing that. But that's something that has to be sustained. I don't know how you learn these days without the internet, without access to online information. Things are evolving so quickly. I was amazed. I went back to my old high school here in San Mateo County and at Sarah High School, and I was amazed to see that they removed the lockers. And they said, Mike, we don't use books anymore. It's all computerized. And I said, wow, it's amazing how things have changed, and they can continue to change. So that's something that we really have to continue to work on. There's still areas of the coast that are without internet, and we're still working on that. I know that when you know, the opportunities have come up, we've tried to avail ourselves of infrastructure money to build that out. It's still an ongoing need that we're working on. And then I'd say the other area was communication and the way we did it. I think during COVID, we were able to really early on realize that, look, the answers are not in my office or necessarily in the Board of Supervisors chambers. They're really out in the community. We need to understand what the needs are. We brought together a very diverse group of individuals, of elected officials and community members and CBOs to really work with us and try to figure out where are the best dollars spent, because they were limited dollars. How do we have the biggest impact on what we're trying to do here? How do we impact the most people? And that was very, very successful, I think. I mean, I think that that's how government should operate on the natural end. And we've tried to sustain that now moving forward and really trying to get input from as many diverse perspectives as possible. And I really think that that's how government works best.
Thank you all. Really inspiring to hear how you've been able to pivot as a result of the pandemic and where you might go next. I think I have time for one more question, and then we're going to open the questions to the audience. We have made a number of recommendations. They're written on the back of our executive summary here, and we would love to get your feedback on the recommendations that we've made and what else you might recommend. Kismet, would you like to start?
Yes. Yes, please. Thank you. Well, I mean, I can easily start with the first recommendation, providing additional state and county funding for childcare subsidies to working parents and childcare providers. From the population health or health and well-being side, I think it's been proven over and over again, and it's become a key issue that's raised annually when we're looking at it, that affordable quality childcare is a major issue and concern for people in San Mateo County, in the region, across the state. I think nationwide, this is an issue. So finding ways, creative ways, innovative ways to help families, assist them in, again, affordable quality childcare is key. And it kind of goes back to what everyone else has said, that we're kind of laying the foundation for life and for families, allowing them to, be able to work and not have to worry about it, to not take, a large percentage out of their paychecks to do that. Sometimes it's almost, cheaper to not work and, provide your own childcare. And that also puts pressure on the family when there's a caregiver that's unable to work. So I think this is an interesting, recommendation. I'd love to hear more about it in the future and how that would work and how that looks, but finding ways to address this topic it seems like kind of a no-brainer. We have to do something about it.
Thank you. I agree with all 5 of these recommendations. We certainly need more service. We need more housing. I know that there are people at Peninsula Family Service included in the 109 homeless family count. I'm so excited about the guaranteed income. I think that's going to be a real makes a huge difference for those families receiving it. And it's a good reminder for Peninsula Family Service about the EITC, because we can help people, our families, get that. But number 5 is my personal favorite. Sure, that won't be a surprise to some in the room. You've heard a lot today about the individual services that the county provides, whether it be childcare, whether it be home visiting, whether it be guaranteed income, food supports, housing supports. But we don't have a central location to put all these services to make sure everyone's getting a warm handoff. To go from the hospital to your first education facility and care, to your first pre-K classroom, through your school districts, into the community college. Our families touch the county through that entire journey, but they're touching different pieces, and they're touching different pieces of the nonprofit world as well. And if we could harness that journey and take the immense resources we are allocating to that journey and looking at it as a arc and not a siloed segment of funding dollars. I think that's what a chief children's officer and a Department of Children, Youth, and Families could do in this county. So that's where I'm excited about.
I completely agree. And the more we can integrate and work together, the better. I love all of these recommendations, and I really appreciate the focus on foster youth because we know how incredibly difficult it is for them. And then I think continuing to keep our focus on basic needs, food, housing, childcare. I think those are super important. I think the EITC is so important, and more importantly, and this will be a longer term thing we'll have to try and do, is, the child tax credit that was expanded during the pandemic halved child poverty. We have to get back a systemic solution at the federal level. It's a little hard to envision just at this moment in time, but I'm sure, as Congresswoman Spear knows, things change and they can change over time. And so I think we need to really focus on our federal partners to build these systemic solutions that will help families across the country. And then if we can't make that happen, then we have to talk to the state and get them to increase the Cal EITC, because there's just some really stable platform income that people are going to need to make it in this country, in this county, in these cities. So that I'm a big fan of those.
Great, thanks, Tracy. I'm certainly in favor of most, if not all, of these. I mean, the first one is a no-brainer. We have got to get more childcare out there. Everywhere we look, we need childcare, and the county's been subsidizing that, and certainly will continue to do that. It all starts with housing. We really can't do anything that stabilizes families unless we have housing. And I'm telling you, folks, I'm a little bit worried about the lack of housing in this county and what it means for us as a county in general. We're seeing vacancy rates, especially in government, that we've never seen before. And it comes down to affordability issue of folks not being able to live here, and commuting hours that are just ungodly. I have a clerk in my office that commutes 2.5 hours each way, and it's really a dichotomy of wanting to live someplace, with a house and a backyard, and then getting the wages here that we have in this county, and at some point that is not sustainable. So that is something that we've got to continue to focus on. Obviously, the GI is something that very much in favor of, and can't wait to see really the outcomes of how that impacts folks in our foster youth also. And then obviously the tax credit, that's very important. I do agree with Heather on 5 that there is a gap in services, and it's not the services, it's really tying the services together. I often thought that, from birth to 3rd grade, there should be a group that just ties those services together, from 4th to 8th grade, and then through high school and college into adulthood. If we can tie those services together and really create some place that coordinates those, we'd be much better off, and it'd be much better utilization of those services. Where that belongs, I'm not quite sure yet, but in fact, I have a meeting on this today with a group of folks around the county where we're talking about this. So very exciting stuff, but great recommendations here.
First, I want to apologize. I didn't mean to say all the other recommendations weren't good. I just kind of singled in on that one. But number 5, I think, is interesting. It's, but I also kind of wonder if we need to take stock of who's doing what, and maybe where a service like that could be within what we have already before creating something, another, government entity, which isn't always, the quickest or the most flexible. Maybe that's not the place for it. But being new, I don't know everything that's out there. So I think it would be nice to take an inventory of who's doing what and where people can get services. And it, bare minimum, each of those different entities knows what everyone else is doing. So there's no wrong door. If you go into one, they can, at least get you or tell you where to go for the next service or for resources, because I found that sometimes that's not as robust as you would like, where, the people that are in that space don't always know what others are doing. And so the idea is, I think, sound, but kind of going back to what Mike said, where that's housed and knowing what the deficiencies are, I'm not sure where we're at with that.
Thank you so much for adding that. I love that we are actually starting a real dialogue here around some of these kind of thorny issues. I think we have time for just one or two questions from the audience. Is there anyone who would like to put something? Diana, right?
Yes, that's right. Diana Reddy, former Vice Mayor, Redwood City. To my great socks. To Dr. Fontana, there was an early slide that demonstrated the asthma that is experienced among children. Not so surprised that a large number of the hardest hit are in Redwood City kind of area, but very surprised that the other area was along the coast. And wondering, why that might be, what kinds of things influence those high rates of asthma, and what we might do in order to mitigate that.
It's a really good question. And as I'm learning the county, I think I can get some better information on that. But you're right. I think it's a little easier to talk about Redwood City and places where it's more urban and you've got a lot of traffic and you've got people moving through, and there may be more factories or things like that that could be impacting the air quality. On the coast, you're right. That's a little surprising to me when I saw this a couple of days ago, actually. And frankly, I need to look into it a little bit more as to what's going on the coast, why that would be. I don't know if it has anything to do with the weather patterns. It's a little, I'm not a California native, nor a Bay Area. This is about last 5 years, but it's interesting to me that anytime there is some environmental something going on, it doesn't even have to be close. It seems to settle, in the Bay Area a lot of times, like in the air quality really gets worse, and it stays, it kind of settles. And I don't know if that's something just about the environment here, but it's definitely something to look into. So it's a little surprising. I'm sorry I don't have a great answer for you today, but I'll definitely look into it and delve a little deeper into why that would be.
Thank you. Did you have a question?
Yes. No, and I can be real quick here. These are all great programs. The difficulty is we need to get to the people. And it's so difficult being poor in that you need to go to Redwood City for this, you need to. So I just ask, as you think moving forward here, being more mobile and your timing. People work multiple jobs. So going from 9 to 5 and you got to be there at a specific time is very difficult. So to be most impactful, please consider whatever you develop in implementing these 5, that we need to go to the people and we need to adjust our time frames. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's really all we've got time for today. I would like to thank all of our panelists for being here. Please give them a warm round of applause. You can go back to your seat.